Yeah, I think it'll be good to get her back on. All right, let's talk about business because we want to talk consumer confidence and we want to talk about how business is doing. And Matt, I'm going to spoil it over these next couple of slides. Small business is actually turning it around a little bit, much more favorable than we were earlier in the year. So why don't you talk to me here about this 12-month and 3-month kind of outlook that we're seeing in regards to small business?
Yeah, at the end of the day, if you're looking at the dotted lines there, this is kind of the 12-month historical average. And then the lighter dotted line is the 3-month historical average. So you can see that we were well below it, but like we went down to 25.5 on this
Yeah.
chart. And, this was when the tariffs came in. This was when Trump was, beating his chest and showing in everybody who's boss. And so there was a lot of fear in the market of just how bad this could tank the economy. But what we've seen is that the world economy is still chugging along. It's still operating at a decent pace, and we're starting to see businesses' confidence start to skyrocket back up. And if we keep going on the pace that we're going, we should be back to historical averages probably in the next couple months. And then with all these bills coming out, with all the spending, that should raise it up even more because they know that hopefully the economy will be running a little bit hotter than it is now.
And you can see these past drops in these recessionary periods, right?
Yeah.
Where we were seeing them really come off. And that's what we're just coming off of with that, just sheer with having Trump in there. And that's why we bring him up so much, because interest rates are coming down, prices are coming down, uncertainty is the big factor. And who's the king of uncertainty but our neighbor to the south there right now, right? So he does come up. And so now let's talk a little bit more about our small business, our importers, exporters, and their outlook. And again, as you can see, we're starting to turn around, Matt.
Yep, everything's starting to look good. They're not as worried about the tariff. They do believe that this is just going to be a little bit of short-term pain. At the end of the day, will there be tariffs left over? It's very possible that, companies around the world or countries around the world are going to have to pay a fee to transact with with an economy that buys the world's stuff. And at the end of the day, the U.S. is in considerable debt. And let's face it, if the U.S. didn't get themselves into so much debt, a lot of that money flows throughout the world and benefits a lot of other countries. At the end of the day, let's be honest with that. So for them to say, hey, listen, you know what, everyone's got to pay a 10% fee or something like that to transact with us or send us your goods. It's not a terrible thing, because if the U.S. is still clipping along and buying, that's great for our economy. That's great for a lot of other economies around the world. Just so as long as it's not 50% or 30% or something like that. But I think there will be a small fee. And I think what we're seeing here is that businesses are okay with that. They're willing to eat it. And that's a good thing for the economy for sure.
No doubt. And what you're saying makes sense. But then I started getting into grounds of like, okay, if I've got to make sure that you're floating, because all your spending does help the world on a big scale, because you are one of the biggest buying economies. Then I start to judge, though, how you spend that money. And I was looking at a fantastic video last night on their new aircraft carriers and just their military budget in general. I'm like, well, hey, if we're going to make sure that we give this to you so you can fund everything, maybe spend it a little bit better.
But you know what? For those aircraft carriers, they get a lot of that material from all over the world. All companies all over the world are building little pieces and little parts for that ship. And it spreads a lot of the money out there. And if it wasn't the U.S. spending all that money, who would?
Yeah.
Maybe China. But
I know we're getting off track here, but
yeah.
I think there is an element too where in recent times, especially as we're so dependent on trade, and we've seen what a disruption to the supply chain can do as we went through COVID. I think it's been a joke for a long time now about America being like the world police, but those aircraft carriers and those military operations that they do run, they do keep trade lines open as well when there are other conflicts. So there is something to be said about that. I know we're way off topic now, but there is something to be said about that. All right. So this is an interesting one. We've talked before where we want to see these numbers in terms of small businesses, their average price plans for the future in terms of the cost of their goods, as well their wage plans. we want to see these together. Times are good when they're together. Times are a little bit tougher as we see them spreading apart. And that was the track that we were on at the start of this year. We saw a big deviation in terms of what they were anticipating the cost of their goods were going to be and their future plans for being able to pay everybody. And so now we're starting to see that come back together, Matt, which I think is fantastic. Because again, you look at the numbers that we had in April. Look at how close we're coming back together now in our updated numbers of June. This is way better. We're jumping from 2.2 to the gap of 3.5. Now it's 2.2 to 2.9 in terms of that percentage change. Much better. We're correcting here.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the economy was running so hot when the pandemic kind of opened up again after the pandemic because of all the money that was in the system. And we couldn't hire enough people. We couldn't find enough people to fill all these vacancies. So ultimately, it drove the wages up, which also drove prices up. It was ultimately wages and excessive money in the system, which drove both of them up. But what we saw with the big uptick in April was the tariff problems. It was like, oh, if we're going to have to spend another 50%, 20, 30, 40, 50% on products to go across borders, this could really start to drive in the cost that we have to give to pass on to the consumer. So we got as high as about 3.5% with wages falling because we're seeing a lot more. We're shedding jobs now, not trying to hoard them. So wages were on the way down, but now because the tariff talk is starting to roll over, we're starting to see the expectations of future prices go back to the historical averages.